There is a place of abiding joy within you. By knowing it comes the end of all suffering. The abiding joy lies in the realization that you are an eternal being and not your physical body alone. The ultimate goal of your human existence is to conquer the mind and discover the immortal self that gives rise to all phenomena of existence. No other goal needs to be realized. It was never about wealth, success, status, fame, etc. It is all about this one core spiritual evolution of the soul. So while you are still here, enjoy your physical life, of course, and the things of it. But keep your consciousness focused and trained towards the eternal self that lies beyond and within all of creation itself. Never lose sight of this. See it in yourself, everyone and everything everywhere you go. That establishes the state of abiding joy, eternal peace and bliss. Practice this divine perception daily, and it will go stronger all the way beyond physical death itself. We get entirely misled by exclusive focus on physical activities and the achievement of physical things. We forget to expand and develop our own consciousness, so we stay incapable of seeing the eternal life that lies within and beyond physical existence itself. We know the body is like a mirage. The physical world is a mirage. It doesn't show the full picture and truth of existence. We must find it within the depths of our consciousness. Joy is what we feel throughout our entire being, whereas happiness is what we feel based on particular events we observe physically. We become happy if we succeed. We experience abiding joy if we finally come to understand we are an eternal soul that is one with God's cosmic soul. So trying to get rid of the bad side in our lives is kind of like this. The more you focus on it, the less it seems to work. It will bite you in the ass, so to speak. Karma works like that. Instead, perhaps make peace with the good and bad in your life, to find this place of abiding joy. So having a pure mind, in order to experience and know the eternal self, simply means having a mind purified from the activity of thought, so it is completely calmed down. Then you can experience the infinite awareness of the eternal self more deeply. The tree of good and evil explains the conflict we experience inside our minds over good things and bad things. We constantly are in resistance to life as it is and can only encounter great suffering. But if we purify our minds, let go of the labels of good and bad, and just dwell in the perfect stillness of God's eternal being, then we learn to connect with and be guided by God's infinite wisdom. Because heaven is that place where bliss and peace rules. Hell is that place where chaos and destruction rules. Once beyond the ego, there is no hell for you. That is the goal of life, the ultimate goal. To go beyond ego so we can reconnect with the state of abiding joy, which is of the soul itself. It doesn't need anything to be in a certain way in order to feel joyous. It is the natural state of the soul, but it gets buried underneath ego tendencies and desires. So then, we suddenly make physical things and results specifically the reason for us being happy or unhappy. We don't even feel the true peaceful joy of the soul anymore throughout our lifetime. We have lost track of the supreme goal of life, which is to awaken and evolve the consciousness beyond its physical boundaries. To know yourself as greater than just your body or current identity. To know you are an eternal soul that is one with the great cosmic soul of God itself. If that is truly grasped and actually perceived from inner spiritual vision, well, that is evolution of consciousness beyond its current earthly limits. So it doesn't even really matter if you hear me say that you are an eternal soul. None of that really has any true value until we actually experience this literally through inner spiritual perception. And they will come to you the more you devote yourself to discovering the truth. In the Gita they said Ayam Atma Brahman, and that means the self is God. And we're not talking about the egoic self that part of you that currently identifies itself with the body and how we have to introduce ourselves throughout this world. It's based on these separate identities, but yet underneath it is still the unity of life. That is the self, that is God, if we understand that within ourselves as well. So last night, for example, I had a dream. I saw my biological family, because I was adopted, for those that didn't know that, but I saw my biological family. They are from Sri Lanka. Now I woke up and I ponder over this. They are not my only family, truly, but my ego might think so. But it doesn't mean I won't have compassion. In this lifetime, for me, I have had multiple families, realistically speaking. But here's the point: God gives wisdom. Each of us has the wisdom and receives it from God, but God is the one that waits on us to perceive it. It would be like, does the person on this planet grasp it? Yes or no? Most of us don't grasp it, and that's okay. Over time we will. But the tricky part for all of us is to actually grasp it and really analyze it. In my case, I know something is off about that dream, where I would think they are my only family, but they are not. I was told they were throughout my life, just like anyone else considers only certain people their family. But I have only one relative, which is God. Since God's cosmic soul is all there is to creation, that means in reality everyone is part of this great cosmic family. We all came from the womb of a woman with the body, but the soul that is of God, and so we turn back to God over and over in all we ever do. So if you wish to purify your mind, absorb your mind in God, as the Gita beautifully stated. Like the reflection we see in this world, in a mirror for example, or anything else that reflects. That is our existence. It is a reflection of the light of what seems to be individual awareness. But behind the individual manifestation is the true light of eternity, that is God's being. Reality seems to be screens on top of screens. I have done it for many years, but now slowly it reveals itself in my desks. They reflect everything in my room in a way. I can look at it and notice. It is like I exist in my own table. It's a reflection, but it's not the real me either. I'm beyond all reflections, the being that even perceives it and made it. The world is wild and bizarre. We don't normally pay attention to these things. I know some of these things reflect you as well, but it is like we exist in them, or else we weren't there. Well, that is exactly God's nature. God exists in everything, is also you. It became you. You are actually God. But currently you identify more with the egoic identity and the body. But if you could let go of them, which at first sounds scary and bizarre, your consciousness would be set free already before you die. It's able to evolve and expand greatly while you're in the body into complete unity with cosmic consciousness. Now, you don't have to really wonder too much about this if you just look in a mirror. What do you see? Well, you see yourself, you would say. Well, actually, you're just being aware of your physical body. You are the awareness beyond the body. So when your parents or loved ones died, if you've had the experience, did you ever look at their body? Because I did with my mother after she passed away. It shocked me to see the colors on her body, but yet it did creep me out a little bit. I won't be in denial of that. I was still a bit younger as well, but I realized too, whatever that is, that's not my mother. That's just a body. The being that occupied the body is gone, but that's the part we want to already truly understand and grasp in order to find eternity. So usually we might casually say and believe there's a soul, and then when someone dies we might also casually say, oh, their soul has gone to a better place. But we don't really contemplate it enough to understand what such statements mean. But the more we would understand it, the more conflict dissolves in our lives. Individually speaking at first, the more suffering starts to vanish and slide off of us, because we understand more and more of the true, deeper nature of ourselves as well in that contemplation. I think that's important, instead of just assuming, well, if someone dies they go on to a better place, and then we kind of wait and see for ourselves without ever preparing our minds and consciousness truly about the nature of the eternal soul, so that we might actually evolve and expand into greater cosmic awareness and unity with God itself. That's what it's all about. Now, another thing I would just think about sometimes casually is the word emotions, which I like to turn into something of energetic emotions. So when you experience emotions, how can you find that abiding joy in those? Because they are energetic motions from the angle I'm looking at them. So they actually disturb you all the time, whether it's good or bad emotions as well. So abiding joy is that state of inner stability, peace. Joy is something you feel throughout your whole being and doesn't really seem to pull you back and forth to anything. It's just there. But happiness comes and goes based on usually things that happen around us and in our lives that we would like. We feel unhappy when stuff that we don't like happens. So you see, they pull us all over the place. We want to zoom in on that state of abiding joy, because in the beginning there was stillness. Then God's cosmic mind vibrated, creating the universe in which we exist now. We know good times and bad times. They are waveforms, energetic motions. Can you see? It might be hard. If I know even feeling good does not matter, even feeling bad does not really matter, what is left? Stillness, isn't it? The source of the unified force. That is bliss. I only notice bliss lurking around me, waiting to enter my skull, to shine through my eyes into the world. Of course, bliss already exists within me and within you, but it's beyond the labels of the egoic mind. It is deep within the depths of the soul. That is where bliss and joy lies, because it is not attached or dependent on anything, physically speaking. Once it truly dawns upon a man or woman that the ultimate goal of life is to evolve their consciousness itself, they will easily let go of their attachments. But until then, as you hear me or anyone else say it, it might make no sense at first. It is just an idea in your mind that hasn't come to life yet. But once it dawns on you fully that the only purpose to your life is conscious evolution and awakening, then suddenly everything changes. Life suddenly looks different. Perhaps for most it is even scary. That's why they try to hide away from it in activities and drugs. Because once you see the real truth, you can no longer see life the way you did before. For me, it has made more and more sense about my existence in a way, and how everything turned out so far if I look back on it, to where I am now and where I came from. It was through ancient spiritual texts I suddenly found what my soul was looking for and was aware of unconsciously. But in the West, where I was raised after being adopted, I could hardly find anyone speak about it, since over here it tends to be all about money and success only. So somewhere in the past, perhaps in previous lifetimes, I've been studying consciousness so intensely that I now ended up in Europe to push it even further, and as I do so, the more it makes sense to me. This life is a mirage. This body is a mirage. Everything is a trap meant to entice my consciousness away from something. And that something I am discovering is the absolute truth of existence. That is how spiritual evolution works after all. You never waste time when studying the nature of the soul, but you are wasting time if your life was only about physical achievements, the ones that you lose once you drop dead. Then once you are dead, you think, I want to achieve more on earth, so you come back. Until one day it will happen. You will realize, I have to look inside. I have to stop looking in the world for what I seek. Let me turn straight into consciousness itself. That is what happened to me, that much I do know. So for me, the death of my mother, which was very tragic since she took her own life, it was a very particular incident that occurred in my world. But it was meant to trigger me by the cosmic soul, but I didn't recognize it right away. That is how these things go. But not just that, being adopted was another one. The divorce of my parents was another one. Addiction was another one. Failing relationships was another one. Succeeding and failing in career goals was yet another one. All of them suddenly showed me I was meant through all of it to reach a point I realized. Let me look in the depths of consciousness itself, to the real nature of existence that lies beyond this duality of good and bad. And it's the same for you. If you analyze your life, you might start noticing a pattern. And the pattern for each and every one of us is meant to lead us towards the awakening, towards becoming aware of God's eternal nature within us and throughout the whole universe. So we overcome all of this suffering, where things constantly go up and down, good and bad times, etc. It just drags us all over the place. Sometimes, like earlier, I close my eyes and I fly into other worlds and then I come back. But it is advanced power to do this at your own will. Yet that is what I seek. That's what I felt compelled and pulled towards learning. It's the only thing worth achieving to me. The ability to withdraw the senses from physical life at will. So you suddenly become aware of different realities where heat does not exist, for example. Bad weather, good weather, it all changes around. It is not tied to physical perceptions. These other dimensions operate quite differently than the ones in time-space reality as we normally know it. But it is important to understand that you, I, everyone, already do this every night. Every night we actually leave the body, but it happens unconsciously. You see, that's what makes it hard. It's hard to do this consciously and deliberately in total control at all times. Then you can no longer be a prisoner of your own body and physical limitations. For example, if they were to throw you in jail, you could brush it off, because you know, it's just my body in a prison, but my mind cannot be imprisoned. But the guards think you are locked up, but secretly your spirit roams the universe without them being able to see what you're doing. That is what this world is like. A prison on a large scale, and nobody seems to notice they are in one. It would be a prison through which consciousness binds its soul to the limitations of what we call matter. But we have to go beyond it and set consciousness free, set ourselves free from all this suffering. That is the supreme goal. We want to start feeling deep love for the self, for consciousness. I'm not talking about deep love specifically for the body or the egoic nature of yourself, because then you become indeed arrogant and egotistical. It's good to have a healthy amount of self-respect and decency towards your body, but we want to feel deep love for the consciousness or awareness that is active through the body, that part which is eternal, that has been said to be God itself in us. Then we in reality are learning to love God's infinite being and can give rise again to the state of abiding joy. Can you love your own consciousness itself? At first it may be tricky, but keep trying and you will discover that you are in reality in love with God itself by doing it. God took upon himself the human form that you are, and we are desperately seeking God consciously or unconsciously. We have to become aware of God's presence within us, which is our own pure consciousness, pure awareness that lies behind the labels we normally give ourselves and things around us. I dare say yes, that is the supreme goal of life, to discover and actually understand from spiritual perception and awareness what it means to be an eternal soul, because that is really the jewel of divine wisdom.